Welcome back to the Daily Balance podcast. I'm Adine.
And I'm Brittany.
And this October, we observe Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We delve into a topic that demands our unwavering attention. It's worth noting that Congress declared October to be Domestic Violence Month, Awareness Month in 1989.
Did you know that nearly 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime? And on average, more than 3 women are murdered by their intimate partners in the U.S. every day. Furthermore, over 10 million adults experience domestic violence annually in the U.S., and domestic violence hotlines receive over 20,000 calls on a typical day.
Wow. Today, we're honored to speak with Dr. Tiffany Brown, a true veteran in the fight against domestic violence with a decades of experience as commander leading the Family Crimes Unit in Baltimore City. Tiffany has seen firsthand the complexities, the challenges, and the triumphs in this vital work, from bridging the gap between reporting and long term safety to implementing groundbreaking policies and fostering critical community partnerships. Tiffany's insights are not just theoretical, they're rooted in action.
Join us today as we explore her journey, the lessons learned, and her powerful call to action for all of us and from beyond the badge. This is the Daily Balance Podcast, and our conversation with Tiffany Brown begins right now.
Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you. Thank you for
Listen,
having me.
we are excited to have you. Now, I'm going to give the audience and our listeners a little backstory to Tiffany. Tiffany, we had earlier, we did a recording earlier, I think in September, about a cause that she will be seen in the future with.
Soon.
And we're excited about that because this woman is a wealth of information.
Mm-hmm.
And once we found out her true credentials after digging and talking more, we had to have her back for this because with all the years experience that she has had in this field, we couldn't slide her in this. So we are welcoming her back. You haven't seen her yet, but we're welcoming her back to this episode.
And I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Yes.
I'm so excited to have you here.
Excited and a little somber because it's not such a joyous topic to talk about, but it's definitely one that everyone should be aware of.
Absolutely.
So Tiffany, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the questions. Do you have anything you want to add?
I don't. I'm ready to get started.
All right, let's go. So
Okay.
we're going to set the stage for action right now and welcome Defining Action. Tiffany, again, welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us today to share your awareness and action with domestic violence from the perspective of law enforcement. Our audience doesn't know this, but you, again, this is your second recording for us and we pivoted. So with this important topic, you want to go ahead?
Your over a decade of experience in the Family Crimes Unit is a testament to dedicated action. Beyond making arrests, what was the primary action-oriented mission of the Family Crimes Unit under your command? How did you define success?
Something very simple to get the job done. So we were often inundated with lots of cases in a year, and we had a small group of people to get the job done. So we had to make it happen because victims depended on us to help them out to get this job done. So I would always tell my team when I was there, before I retired, I said, listen, make sure that you treat each case the same in terms of, it's going to be different cases, but in terms of making sure that you're handling it appropriately and by the law, and make sure that you're doing your very best on each case, even though it can be overwhelming at times. So I'm like, treat everyone with respect and make sure that you're handling those cases to the best that you're to the best of your ability, because that's very important to be thorough with your cases.
Okay. And since you mentioned that, so what did success look like for you in that?
So success, it was getting the job done from beginning to end. So just to give a backstory of how my unit helps domestic violence victims, we come in after the patrol unit has concluded their initial response. So let me just give you an example. So the Baltimore Police Department or any police department gets a call for service for a domestic violence situation where, let's say, a husband and wife are involved in a domestic dispute, and the husband stabbed the wife, but she did not die. So in that particular case, it will be a case that the family crimes unit would handle because it's not a homicide. It's a serious aggravated assault, but it's not a homicide. So now, once the patrol unit has done their initial assessment, then we're going to respond out. My team responds out after that, and they take over the investigation.
Okay. All right.
So once we get there, it's like, okay, what's X, Y, and Z done? Meaning, okay, what did the victim get? Services such as medical attention.
Mm-hmm.
Was medical services rendered? Um, what were there any arrests made? It's basically a checklist that we're doing, and this is stuff that patrol most likely would have already handled when we got there. But it's like, were these things done? Um, does the victim have a place to go? um, those type of things. So this is where we get where my unit is getting involved. It's advocacy service needed for that particular case. It's those things. It's the next steps beyond the initial patrol response.
Right. Got you. So, bridging the gap, what is the most significant gap you identify between a victim reporting domestic violence and them achieving long term safety and stability?
I would say lack of resources resulting in them going back to their abuser. Resources is so important, yet it's something that it's lacked, and that's in a whole lot of cities, a whole lot of states. They lack those resources. So that is one of the things that definitely hurt a victim, because it's like, how do I get out of this situation? I don't have a place to go. um, if they send me to a place, it's only for a temporary time. What am I going to do beyond that time?
Ah,
So that was a
gotcha.
big gap right there. That's a huge
Resources.
gap
Mm-hmm.
that not only the city of Baltimore experienced, but other agencies across the state, and I'm sure other
Yeah.
agencies across the
The
nation.
country. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
that
the
is
numbers are very high.
yeah.
They're it's alarmingly high.
Yeah. I can only imagine. There's seems to be a gap nationwide for resources for all resources, but most importantly, it's that okay, now I'm out here. What keeps me from going back? Well, I don't
Right.
have the finances. I don't have a support system or a village behind me, and
Right.
then you're looking at going in shelters and
Mhm.
things that you're unfamiliar with and places you're unfamiliar with. So there's got to be extremely scary for someone in that position.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Glad we touched on that. Definitely seems like it could be a universal issue, like you're saying. So that's something we should probably work towards.
Yeah. Mm.
Yes,
What police and community actions are needed to close that gap?
more resources.
More
Yeah.
I
resources.
I can't stress it enough.
Yeah.
The lack of resources is unreal. The numbers are so high. So I just want to paint a picture so that listeners can understand where I'm coming from. Let's just say you have a place that houses 100 families, but you have 500 families that need assistance.
Mm.
We need more resources for that. We need to
Yeah.
be able to fix that issue right there, so that way people will have a place to go if in emergency situations where they need to relocate.
Right.
And not just housing.
Hmm.
Also, they're going to need other things such as food. They're going to need a phone. I know we did the
Therapy.
therapy,
Therapy.
all of
Uh-huh.
those things.
Uh-huh.
All of
Yeah.
those things. Yes.
I look at
So
it as if, like, if there was some type of a national emergency and you had to leave home really quickly and you could not go back to that home, what would you do? And that's the kind of mind frame you have to think about that. So,
absolutely.
for policies into practice, you oversaw policy implementation, correct?
Well, that I was the family crimes commander,
Mm-hmm.
but I was in charge of. giving advice to those types
Mhm.
of units. So I would reach out and give them information about that,
Okay.
about policy.
So, what is the one internal policy you think regarding domestic violence that maybe you fought to change or implement and turn into a tangible positive change?
I have one that I'm so very proud of. I
Okay,
actually
speak.
created the Baltimore Police Department's domestic violence safety plan, and
Mhm.
what it is a plan that it's basically it's a sheet, and it has all of the steps that a victim could take
Mhm.
if they're trying to leave their abuser, and then once they leave their abuser, what can they do.
Mhm.
We didn't have that before, and
Okay.
I was speaking to one of the advocates because we had advocates that actually worked in our office, and
Uh-huh.
it was brought to my attention that we didn't have one, and I said we need to change that because this is a pretty big city, and we victims need to know what can they do, where can they go, who can they contact.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
I said I'm going to create this domestic violence safety plan, and it's going to tell you all of the things, and that's what I did. It was something very simple, but we didn't have it. Other agencies
Mhm.
had it, but we did not. And I put it together. Okay, who should you talk? Who should you contact? If you're planning to get away, how should you even plan something like that? Do
Uh-huh.
you should you have some clothes set to the side or whatever? I mean, it's like it broke it down, and I was very proud of that. I really
Mhm.
was because I felt like somebody's reading that, and I'm
Mhm.
helping somebody. I don't
Yeah,
know who, but I know that I'm helping somebody, and I
it
was
kind
very
of
proud of
reminds me
that.
of that movie Sleeping with the Enemy and how she strategically planned her getaway.
Yes,
And in some cases, it's just like that, you know.
yes, yes,
So true.
yes, absolutely. So,
So, beyond the 911 call and first responders, for our listeners who are first responders or train them, what is the most critical non enforcement action patrol officer can take at the scene of a domestic violence call that fundamentally changes the trajectory of a victim's case?
well, I want to say safety is always first for
Hmm.
anybody who's in a domestic violence, whether they're a witness of it, if they see it physically with their eyes, or if they can hear it. Safety is first, and when an officer is responding to that scene, um, and they don't know, they're responding, they don't know what's going on. Their initial
Yeah,
response is they're coming there.
yeah.
It's been situations where maybe somebody is trying to come and give some information, but when that officer is first getting there, they don't know who that person is. So it's
Mhm.
very important of how that approach goes, and you want to
Mhm.
make sure that area is clear because you don't know what's happening. There's been situations where officers were on the scene, and of course, you see the police cars and you think that it's safe, but that happened in this very case, and
Mhm.
somebody came out, and the suspect shot from the window and killed the
Oh,
person. That scene was
yeah.
not safe,
Right.
so it's very important to make sure that scene is safe before proceeding to approach the officer. And I know that they want to get the information out. Maybe another great thing is maybe just call 911 if you have some information and you don't feel safe. Call and just let them know, because the dispatcher can relay that information to the officer.
Mm.
But you want to make
Okay.
sure that the scene is safe. I know I keep saying it, but
Mm.
that's very important because people, they get hype and it's, oh, let me just say it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you need to make sure that scene is safe,
Yeah.
because
That.
we don't want to have anybody getting hurt
Mhm.
trying to help somebody else like that. So it's very important to make sure that that's a safe approach first.
Well, speaking of safety risk assessment and as action, the lethality assessment program, the LAP, was an action tool. Can you explain how this program turns an officer's awareness of high risk into immediate action and what the next steps for a victim who screens high danger?
Yeah, so with the lethality report, that is also something that the patrol officer is going to be the first one that's going to give that victim the lethality report. So when they're there and they're checking it off, if they fill it out, because they're not required to do that. I'm not sure how it is state to state, but in state of Maryland, they're not required. And it's probably like that in other states too, but I'm not sure. They're
Okay.
not required. And you have to also understand too with that. what the lethality report, because I know some officers, they would be like, oh, they didn't fill it out and they were being uncooperative. Well, maybe not really uncooperative. If I just finish being assaulted and hitting my face and things like that, I
Mhm.
may not be in the right frame of mind to get it done.
Right there.
But let's
Yeah.
just say it's a case where they have done the lethality report and they're checking off that the suspect has a gun, they have access to a gun and all that stuff. Those are raising those numbers higher. So
Mhm.
in a case like, if my unit was the former unit when I was a part of the family crimes unit, if they are handling that case, that raises it higher when it's time for us to go in there to make an arrest. It raises the threat level.
Okay.
So it's like a point based type of thing. So if it's
Oh,
something that's a high threat, then now that's going to determine who we're going to have to go in and make their entry to try to arrest that suspect, meaning like a SWAT team or something like that. So in those high danger situations, we're gonna seek assistance for that victim immediately. If they're saying, okay, it's somebody with a gun, we're gonna ask them, do they feel safe here? Do you want to leave? And of course, it's always up to the victim if they want to stay or if they want to leave. We cannot force them to leave. We
mhm.
cannot force them to do any of that stuff, but we will offer them some type of assistance.
Accountability beyond jail. From a commander's perspective, what community and judicial actions outside of a prison sentence do you believe are most effective for achieving offender accountability and behavioral change? For example, like intervention programs or mandatory counseling.
Sure. So drug treatment programs. You have a lot of people who are offenders, and of domestic violence offenders. A lot of them are drug users. So drug
Mhm.
treatment programs are very, very important and can sometimes be effective. Coping strategies,
Mhm.
how to have something on how to manage your emotions. Counseling, therapy, intervention programs, those type of things are very helpful outside of jail. They sometimes they even have community service with some of the domestic violence places. They do
Mhm.
community service at those places.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So, witness and neighbors. Many people are aware that abuse is happening next door. What is a specific, safe, and an actionable step that a neighbor or friend or a relative can take to help without jeopardizing their own safety? Because I know that's a concern. Most people don't want to get involved. What can they do without jeopardizing their own safety?
Sure. Call 911 and remain anonymous. Make that clear they want to remain anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
They can send an anonymous letter to the police station and let them know. I mean, sometimes it depends on the situation, because I know if I only have one neighbor to my left and they're very specific about certain things, it's like, well, I know who said that, because but I would be clear if you're going to be putting that information out, like, listen, I'm afraid and I really want to help this person, but I don't want it to come back to me. You can straight
Right.
up say that. and
Mhm.
and I can't tell you how many times we've gotten calls and it's like anonymous caller states the calls are anonymous. It's, you can remain anonymous. I know some people's like, oh, it's not anonymous. I've heard them all the time. The anonymous caller states this. It
Yeah.
happens all the time. So those are just things that can be done. Write a letter, call it anonymously. You can send an email. You can even come up with an email address that's anonymous, so you're not tracking it back to you. These are
Mhm.
all ways that you can try to help. Or if you can also maybe put that DV safety plan in the
Mhm.
mailbox, send it to them themselves anonymously, addressed to that
Okay.
person,
Yeah.
and just address to that person. So maybe, okay, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to get in your business, but
Mhm.
I want to put this out there, and I'm going to just put it in the mailbox, and now it's addressed to that person, and that person
Yeah.
has that information.
Mm.
Or if
Excellent.
not the DV safety plan, let's just say you're in a, because that's something for Baltimore. Let's just say
Mhm.
you're in a whole other state. You're in
Yeah.
California. You can just send them, print out anything with domestic violence. You can find a safety plan anywhere online, and you can put that
Yeah.
in somebody's mail and send it to them.
Mm. I love
Excellent.
that. So, for an advocate's role, your unit worked closely with advocates. How should listeners who work in nonprofits or social services best coordinate their actions with law enforcement to create a seamless, trauma informed support system?
Um, we did a lot of interagency collaborations,
Hmm.
and I think it's very important to do those interagency collaborations and having those meetings, whether it's monthly, biweekly, weekly, however you're going to do it.
Hmm.
It's very important to have those meetings, and that's how you come up with a plan, because everybody's going to come to the table with something different. I'm going to talk
Hmm.
about how we're coming from a police perspective, and then they're
Hmm.
going to talk about whatever. And I actually did that when we were there. We had different agencies there, the multi-agency round table type of thing, or Zoom, or however, and we're meeting and we're talking about different things that we're trying to get done and how we can all come together.
Okay. So now for funding, because money talks, okay, and I think that's the problem with the lack of resources, the funding. So if you were given a dedicated grant to immediately act on a single priority to reduce domestic violence, where would you invest that fund and why?
Whew. How much time do we have? um, so I've mentioned this already before. Housing is big. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's really big. I
Mhm.
can't stress this enough. A lot of times, the housing may only be for 3 days, so they may only have it for a week. Well, we all know that's not enough time.
Right.
So we need money for housing. We need phones. They need to be able to make the phone calls. Sometimes they have children or jobs or whatever the case may be. You need to be able to talk on that phone to be able to take care of business if they don't already have a phone. Sometimes the abuser have taken the phone and they don't have that, so now they need a phone.
Yes.
Or maybe they had to shut it down because the abuser may have their location, so they got to shut that down so they won't find where they at.
Right.
Counseling, very important for the therapy. If it's not covered by their insurance, it's very important for them to get that counseling for themselves, and if they have children, because a lot of these kids they see a lot of trauma, and it's very important for them to be able to get that counseling that they need. Voucher services. I know I touched on it briefly about food and things like that. Yes, I have a place to stay. You're giving me a place to stay, but I don't have any money and I don't have any food. So
Yes.
vouchers for food, so that they can have
Transportation, maybe.
transport. Yep. I listen. You
Mhm.
done beat me to it. So we vouchers for car service. That was something that we actually were working on as well, getting that service, because a lot of people, they may not have cars, or maybe the abuser has taken their car, or maybe they're afraid that the
Yeah.
car is being tracked or whatever. So
Okay.
vouchers for that, because you can get like something through like Uber for
Yes.
transportation. So yes, so that's something. Um, Other things, some people, they have lost their jobs because as a result to everything that's going on, they're missing time from work. Their bodies all bruised up, so they're embarrassed about going to work, so now they've lost their job, so now they need to find a new job, so now they need help trying to get back out there in the world to get a job. So this is all things that would help, all grant funded things that would be able to assist a victim of domestic violence to get back on their feet and to be able to get some normalcy back into their lives.
Right. Okay.
Or, yeah, normalcy, definitely. It's how can you achieve that without access to these resources?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for the victim empowerment action, we know financial instability is a huge barrier for victims leaving. What actions did your unit take, or what actions should other systems take to directly address the economic vulnerability that keeps victims tied to their abusers?
So this goes back to the interagency collaboration. This is when I want to reach
Mhm.
out to my partners and my friends and say, "Hey, this is what we have. How can you
Mhm.
help?" So I mean, we met with the House of Ruth. That's a domestic violence
House of
uh,
Ruth.
Yes, House of Ruth. The House of Ruth,
Oh,
Maryland. Yeah, that's they're really big in Maryland with helping domestic violence victims. You
mhm.
reaching out to them. You're reaching out to all of the agencies that you are connected with,
Right.
to try to find out how can we make this happen. How can we get additional resources? This is what we've done so far. Is there anything that you can add to bring to the table? And
Okay.
it's that simple. Like, how can you bring this to the table? Can you help
So
us out with this?
that
Yeah.
collaboration is definitely got to be in place for you to do that.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about actionable hope. So Baltimore has, I guess, a bad reputation for being a high violence city. Um, it can be hard to maintain hope. So can you share an example of a successful collaborative action involving police, the courts, and the community that showed a sustainable change is possible?
Sure. I'll share one case in particular that stuck out, a domestic violence case. And
Mm,
it was a mother. It was the wife is the one who was being abused. Very educated woman, good job, all of the things, but a victim of domestic violence. And for many years this had happened. She was very embarrassed to even come forward. That happens a lot. So,
mm,
and for the listeners out there, because somebody's probably like, I don't want to tell my story. It happens.
mm.
It affects all classes. So,
It sure does.
so she's embarrassed. So she finally comes forward, but she's very hesitant on everything. And we're like, we're gonna get you through this process. We're gonna help you out. Um, Anything that you need, just contact us. Whether you
Mm,
need somebody to escort you to court. So it was one of those type of things where we were making sure. Well, the detectives have to go there anyway for court because they're summoned to be there. So we made sure that we work with the state's attorney's office. That is who is the one who's going to be prosecuting, and we're working with them to make sure that the victim is good. We're working with them to make sure that the child is good as well. And it was, just a success story because she was able to see it. She was able to see it through with our help. She didn't give up after she finally came forward, and she was able to finally pick up the pieces and get the therapy that and things that she had requested for her and her child. The guy, he was arrested, and he did some time in jail, and she was really able to just pick up the pieces and just go and move on and move out of state. And it was for me, that's a success story.
mm,
I'm glad that we were able to assist her because I can only imagine how hard that was for her,
yeah.
to have to feel like you didn't have anybody to lean on because and I meant to mention, I forgot to mention that she didn't have any family in the state.
Mm,
Wow.
So
Right.
you feel like, I'm a successful person, but I don't have anybody here. But now I have this going on, and I'm so embarrassed. So that's just, one of the many stories that I it, it I can remember that, and it really moved me because I was like, wow, that could be anybody. It could be any
exactly.
one of us, really.
Yeah. And you were talking, and what I also want to add in there too is that sometimes this is a one-time thing. It doesn't
Mm.
necessarily have to be a pattern of abuse. Sometimes
Right,
it's just a
One
one-time
time.
abuse
Yeah.
situation,
right.
and then people are with these people for years. So you still love that person. The love doesn't go away overnight. Just the circumstances has now changed.
Yes,
you know
yes,
and so for all those people who may be judging, don't judge because you can't turn those feelings off overnight
It's true.
just because
absolutely.
this incident does happen. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, for personal reflection and like a final call to action, your commander's legacy after a decade, over a decade, you,
decades.
heck, yes. If you could distill your knowledge into one single piece of advice for elected officials or police brass in any city on reducing domestic violence, what action would you demand?
Well, I would say, I know I sound like a broken record, but the resources, the
Yeah.
resources, the resources. Domestic violence can affect any family. It doesn't matter of the class. It doesn't always mean the poverty-stricken families. It could be
Mm-mm.
all. It could be the rich, the poor, the middle class. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Yes.
Resources are needed from all agencies, everybody involved. Uh, everybody needs to be all hands on deck when it comes down to this type of thing, because domestic violence can go back to so many different things, so it's
Yes.
connected to other crimes sometimes. And
Yeah.
it's very important. And I would really beat the streets with making sure that voices were heard. I would be that voice for a lot of people. And I'm hoping
Okay.
that somebody else is doing the same thing, because it's needed. It really is.
Listen up, people. She's spot on with that. So, for the listeners out there, you made the transition from uniform to holding a doctorate. Tiffany, man. For a listener who feels a desire to help but doesn't know, where do I start? What is your personal concrete call to action after listening to this episode? What would you say?
Um, I would say that if you see something, say something, and provide the help that, um, provide any assistance that you can. And if you want to help, reach out to your local police department, reach out to these advocacy places. Like I mentioned, House of Ruth, but then you also have other places that you can reach out to across the globe. Reach out, find out what's out there. Google is your friend. I mean, now forget Google. We got Chat GPT now, right?
Right?
You can put it in
AI
there
is a
and it will
thing.
give you a whole list of things. And it will lay it out, and it would tell you exactly, what you can do. I think with the lack of resources, we can always use some help, always.
Right.
So, and wouldn't it really feel good to help out somebody else?
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, again, as always, Tiffany, you have brought the insight and the information. So hopefully you've reached the one person. And if you reach one person here today, we could not be more thankful. So
Absolutely.
once again, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And we certainly appreciate you being here to discuss this, raising awareness, especially for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We appreciate your time, Tiffany. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was a truly powerful and insightful conversation with Dr. Tiffany Brown, a veteran in the fight against domestic violence, as we went beyond the badge, a decade of fighting domestic violence.
So, from defining the action oriented mission of the Family Crimes Unit to understanding the complexities of the Lethality Assessment Program, LAP, Tiffany has given us not just awareness, but a clear roadmap for action. We explored the critical role of first responders, what accountability looks like beyond jail time, and the specific safe steps an aware neighbor can take. Her insights on closing the gap between reporting and long term safety, whether through policy or through crucial nonprofit partnerships, underscore the fact that this is a community wide responsibility.
Yes, and Tiffany's final message to us is a potent reminder awareness is just the beginning, action is what takes to save lives. If anything you've heard today sparked a desire in you to act, remember the resources are available. Please consider supporting or volunteering with a local domestic violence advocacy group, or simply commit to a safety, being that supportive neighbor or friend.
If you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800 799 SAFE. That's 800 799 SAFE. Or text START to 88788. You can even have an online chat at www.thehotline.org.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us on the Daily Balance podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button. Like, share, and follow us on all our social media at the Daily Balance podcast. It really goes a long way in helping our mission and spreading awareness.
We also want to hear from you, so please leave us a comment and interact with us to let us know what actions you are taking to bring awareness to your cause and what you want to hear from us. Put that right here in our comment section, and if you want to share with us your action, we can mention that on our show.
And the conversation doesn't stop here. For our dedicated supporters, we're kicking off our after show for the first time called Tea time. We'll be continuing today's topic, answering your questions, diving deeper into personal stories you don't want to miss
Buckle up.
that relate to our topic, finalizing and tantalizing detail about the after show content, and just hanging out.
So, tea time is where we get to connect with our closest community. If you want to be a part of that inner circle and get instant access to the after show, visit.
Tune in again next week for another inspiring episode. And until then, always remember, count it all joy.
That's it right there.